reputations were hard-earned and fought over. The California Gold Rush of 1848 triggered a surge of settlers westwards across the US, and in the coming years, many followed the dream. We see them now, in the stories they left behind, in the wake of their journey. The tales became legends as the news spread of the fastest gun or the determined sheriff charged with bringing order. Photographers began to capture the moment, and very soon a brand new technology not only showed us the way folk looked back then, but also the way they moved.
Name's Josie Wales.
Arrest in Arizona for the murder of Cal Brett.
There'll be no fights, no killing.
You calling me a liar?
Come on out of here, still alive.
It's no surprise that a story of Western bravado was inspiration for one of the earliest silent movies. In 1903, Edwin S. Porter, one of Thomas Edison's cameramen and an actor himself, directed The Great Train Robbery. Porter's film was a milestone. It had the first use of title cards in a film, a panning shot, and used cross-cutting editing techniques. This film was a breakthrough, as it also introduced the now standard plot conventions defining the Western genre. Good versus bad, villain versus heroes, robbery followed by chase, and the final showdown.
Walk forward.
Porter set the blueprint upon which all others could build. As well as the stock of character types, the specific settings of a Western movie soon became standard through the years. The outpost fort. Isolated homestead. The saloon. Jailhouse. The main street. Small frontier towns. The campfire. Early titles of the silent era also drew on the historical stages of Western settlement. James Cruise's The Covered Wagon of 1923 and The Iron Horse by John Ford in 1924. These were big-budget movies that earned at the box office. Storylines were adapted from novelists like James Fenimore Cooper, and many of the stories were born out of legend. The feared outlaw, Billy the Kid.
Hey, didn't he call you Billy the Kid?
Yeah.
From what I've heard about that young man, gentlemen, you're most fortunate to be defying the same air I'm compelled to breathe until I flee this iron pagoda.
Heroes like General Custer, Buffalo Bill, and places and events like Gettysburg, Dodge City, and the Alamo.
You know what that building is over there?
What, that old broken church?
You ever hear of the Alamo?
Of course, everyone has, but...
That's it.
Clay, will you listen to me,
No,
please?
you listen to me. Texas was born inside those walls. Those old-time Texans died for something pretty important. I wouldn't want them to know that I pulled out just because the going got rough.
Raw history was spun into film industry myth. To quote John Ford's The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. Often, tales of technological progress were graphically illustrated within a scene. In Stand Up and Fight, Robert Taylor plays a bankrupt gentleman on his way to the city to start again. He's full of the technological wonders of the day.
You and Susan should have come from Boston by the steam railroad instead of by stagecoach.
Steam railroad? Those contraptions are the invention of the devil. They're not safe.
But it's a modern way to travel. And
Well, I'll be hanged if I'll ride in one, hauling people behind that tea kettle on wheels.
Wake up, Aunt Amanda. Look, there's the steam train. No, here.
Look at those fools. They buy a ticket to ride on the thing and then have to get out and push it. We beat them! We beat them! Not much to crow about. That should end this mean train nonsense.
The scene and the script speak for themselves, and it won't be long before the other side gains ground.
Gentlemen, that's a symbol of America's future. Progress. Iron men and iron horses. You can't beat them.
Hollywood was on a winning streak, and studios soon realized they'd struck gold. Westerns not only drew in the audiences, they also won critical acclaim. Wesley Ruggles' big-budget epic, Cimarron, starts at the Oklahoma land rush of 1889 and ends in 1929. Released in 1931, the story follows the life of Yancey Cravat, played by RKO's big star of the day, Richard Dix. His wife is played by top star Irene Dunne. The movie opened with thousands of extras, herds of livestock, and dozens of cameramen for a recreation of the land rush scenes. The story centers around the boom town of Osage and sees Yancey run the local paper, the Oklahoma Wigwam.
I'll show them first crack. The Oklahoma Wigwam prints all the news all the time, knowing no law except the law of God and the government of these United States. Say, that's a pretty good slogan.
Moviegoers in 1931 would have marveled at the scale of the story. It's still impressive today. Dix plays a sympathetic, well-meaning character, a bit of a do-gooder, but you can't fail to like him for his dreams and ambitions.
We're going into new things, Pet. A new empire.
Just what the country needed in the Great Depression of the 30s. It's a vintage piece that captivates movie fans. Director Ruggles' atmospheric shots have the feel of the Old West. And his rough-and-ready supporting cast provide the character.
When I tell them to take a drink, they drink, don't they? They must drink.
It became the first Western to get an Academy Award for Best Picture, and the only Western until Dances with Wolves won it in 1990.
Well, if it ain't young.
Howdy. Howdy.
29 years later, Anthony Mann would remake the story with Glenn Ford.
We'll give them a decent town and decent trade. All around are thousands of acres of the richest land in Oklahoma. And it'll all be people by this time tomorrow.
The same land rush was also the setting for the 1939 movie, The Oklahoma Kid, with Warner's top stars Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney.
You know who that is? Oh, that's the Oklahoma Kid.
Cagney brought his city slicker mannerisms to the role of the prairie Robin Hood.
Unhook this lead horse.
Both actors were more famous for playing tough guys of the modern era, but they brought a conviction and a lack of self-consciousness to their roles as outlaws. Such was the popularity of the Westerns that studios capitalized on the stock footage they could use to create new material. Studios made condensed versions of the big hits of the day.
The sudden appearance of the onrushing lawmen closing in on them caught the surprised raiders too completely off guard.
You're under arrest, all three of you. By the time you get out of prison, this country will have outgrown small-time poachers like you.
That may be, but when I do get out, I'm going to make it my business to collect for every one of those hides, and we're going to collect in full.
Right. If you ever round our way, look us up.
And even Bogey got an understudy.
We'll let the field all the way. Nobody else in sight.
Ahead of us.
We'll have you sighted at the land office.
Oh, now keep your shirt on.
However, despite the public's appetite, the Western was amongst the slowest genres to evolve, and even the advent of sound was failing to make much of an impact. What could this new invention add to the marketing of Westerns?
I don't want to play in your yard.
Studios tried genre-mixing formats. Westerns had to have entertainment, as well as action, as well as drama, and so the singing cowboy was born. The most popular of the day were Gene Autry, Hopalong Cassidy, and Roy Rogers. Music became integral to the Western movie because music was a huge part of popular culture, used to pass stories on from one generation to the next.
One night in a border town saloon many years ago, a bartender served a customer and dropped the coin into the cash drawer, only to see it slip through a crack and disappear.
Warner Brothers sing-alongs popularized the music further still.
For there in the opening was a strange manuscript, a poem to which someone had apparently jotted down a hasty tune.
Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam.
My Little Buckaroo was a new song in 1937, written especially for the motion picture Cherokee Strip.
Then the marketing men got in on the act, using the format as a promotional tool for contemporary Western songs too.
It was most ably introduced by Dick Foran.
Close your sleepy eyes, my little buckaroo.
The songs that were used in Westerns were generally of the period, and they signaled authenticity to the audience, a kind of shorthand that said what was on the screen would be historically accurate. And these songs would have played to packed houses in 19th century music halls.
I's gwine back to Dixie, I's gwine back to Dixie, I's gwine where the orange blossoms grow.
In the 1942 movie of General Custer, They Died with Their Boots On, we see Errol Flynn discover what was to be the 7th Cavalry's signature tune.
The song, sir, the name is Gary Owen, and the 5th Royal Lancers rather fancied it because it goes jolly well on a horse.
Oh, we can dare and we can do, united men and brothers true, their gallant footsteps to pursue and change our country's story.
To emulate their high renown, to strike our false oppressors down, and surely all triumphant town with Gary Owen in glory.
The roots of the song lie in Ireland, and in the movie, Custer made it his own, a marching tune that inspired his glorious 7th Cavalry.
I reckon I know more about riding than dancing, Miss Dawn.
Oh, please don't call me that. Makes me feel so old.
Oh, all right, Ruth. Maybe if you called me John, it'd help my dancing.
Music could give a character the extra dimension, and even John Wayne was given a harmonica in some of his earliest roles.
Well, buddy, let's go see what all this ruckus is about. I heard you say that nobody could ride this horse. Well, I'm willing to tackle him, providing he goes free if I ride him.
You can see the John Wayne style emerging in movies like Riding Cowboy.
So you're the hawk.
Come on, get up.
Bring on to hell! Good morning, boys.
The Big Stampede.
How about a cup of coffee? I'm arrested in Arizona for the murder of Cal Brett.
And The Man from Monterey. These movies were made to support the main feature, and each one is only 55 minutes long. But they were packed with action, romantic interest, and a horse named Duke. John Wayne was discovered as an extra by director John Ford in 1928. And the experience he was gaining in movies like these would prove invaluable to Ford in later years. He gave John Wayne his big break in Stagecoach in 1939. Set in the dramatic Monument Valley, Big John starred as the Ringo Kid. Director John Ford met the real-life legend Wyatt Earp and used his true account of the gunfight at the OK Corral to add authenticity to his movie, My Darling Clementine, starring Henry Fonda. This was at a time when the early Westerns were being made. Because the last frontier of the West was so close by, real cowboys drifted to Hollywood to serve as consultants and extras on Western sets. And so, the Western picture was born. Like jazz, it's one of the few art forms that Americans can lay claim to. They invented it, and for movie makers and audiences, the subject matter hasn't yet grown tired. The Western picture's development from the Second World War on saw a period of reinvention.
Your move.
Now, movie makers had something they could bank on, exploit or turn on its head. They could chew on it and then spit it out.
I'm tired and I'm angry.
Certain trends began to be discerned. The Westerns in this period took on a new sharp edge, and new themes prevailed. Social significance, sexuality, and violence. Filmmakers reworked their key characters. Where once we had the clean-cut and honorable, now we're exposed to the obsessive and revenge-driven.
If you let your hate get the upper hand, it'll throw your timing off.
Westerns expanded the time frame, going back as far as colonial times in Northwest Passage with Spencer Tracy.
What's this map?
Oh, that's Ferrandri's map of the Northwest Passage.
What do you know about the Northwest Passage?
And into the 20th century for the Wild Bunch.
The next time you make a mistake, I'm going to ride off and let you die.
The field of view expanded too. Film formats got wider and gave the audience something else. The experience of actually being there. CinemaScope, VistaVision, Warner-Color, and rudimentary surround sound all added to the enjoyment of the new Westerns. 1962 saw the biggest presentation of them all, and probably the most ambitious Western ever. The biggest directors, George Marshall, John Ford, and Henry Hathaway, used 3 cameras photographing the same scene, aligned to give an extreme wide angle. It was the crowning glory of a technique called Cinerama, and the movie was how the West was won. It gave the audience an all-enveloping view of the wide open country, and could follow James Stewart, Henry Fonda, Gregory Peck, and a host of big-name stars across mountains, down swollen rivers, and into new towns. A young George Peppard plays the son of James Stewart, who carries his memories and his father's character traits to war. He becomes a war hero when he saves General Sherman, played by John Wayne, from an assassin's bullet.
There ain't much glory to looking at a man with his guts hanging out.
Spencer Tracy narrates how the West was won. A movie that not only did well at the box office, it also won Best Script Oscar for James R. Webb.
You can live with that. That ain't crying. That's just new life going on.
In They Died With Their Boots On, director Raoul Walsh used a little artistic license in his 1942 portrayal of the life of General George Armstrong Custer.
Welcome to West Point, sir. May I direct you to the Commandant?
Yes, if he's the proper person for me to see. I'm Mr. Custer, George Armstrong Custer of Monroe, Michigan. I've been appointed to the Academy as a cadet.
Custer was dashingly presented by Errol Flynn from his idealistic days at West Point.
What made you honor the Army by choosing it as a career? Glory, Mr. Sharp, glory. I want to leave a name behind me that the nation will honor. There's a great many more statues for soldiers than there are civilians, I've noticed.
Through the glory years during the Civil War.
Priest, what's that? He's got more gold braid on him than a French admiral.
We'll ride to the sound of the guns.
To his defeat at the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Now, signal the people, drive back my horses, or I'll hang you at the fort gate.
The screen character and events are glamorized, but you can't deny that Walsh made a great Western. The black and white photography and supporting stars in this movie are excellent. Olivia de Havilland looks her most devoted as his wife Libby, and audiences genuinely sympathize with Anthony Quinn's Sioux tribe at the government's double cross.
The word of the great white father's broken word. Hear me now, long hair. If this word broken now, not only Sioux, but the Cheyenne and every living tribe between mountains and great waters will gather in one last battle.
The movie is notable not only for the action scenes, but for more tender moments too. As in this scene, where Custer and his wife say their last goodbye.
Walking through life with you, ma'am, has been a very gracious thing.
The scene was all the more poignant, because after 11 movies together, it was their last. Custer's last stand is definitely heroic, if a little at odds with the truth of the Battle of Little Bighorn. Pre-war movies were not without political and social comment either. James Cagney was a spokesman for the Native Americans' cause in this scene from The Oklahoma Kid.
The white people steal the land of the Indians, right?
They get paid for it, don't they?
Paid for it? Yeah. A measly $1.40 an acre, price agreed to with the point of a gun. Then the immigrants sweat and strain and break their hearts, carving out a civilization. Fine, great. Then when they get all pretty and prosperous, along come the grafters, and land grabbers and politicians, and with one hand skim off the cream and with the other scoop up the gravy. Not for me.
Filmmakers like John Ford sought to redress the balance of history with a revisionist Western, Cheyenne Autumn. Presenting a story of the harsh treatment of the Cheyenne tribe on their arid reservation and the heroic journey back to their rich homelands. Richard Widmark plays the army officer in charge of the Cheyenne on the reservation. He's torn between duty and decency.
You've been here from the beginning. You've watched them die of smallpox and measles and malaria. You've watched them starve. Haven't you anything to say?
Nothing that you can't say better.
Realizing the tribe is slowly dying from disease and neglect, he sets out to win their case at the highest level.
Those Indians are dying of cold and starvation.
I only heard they were being, what's the word? Restrained? Disciplined?
No, sir. Murdered is the right word.
Edward G. Robinson makes an all-too-brief appearance as the government official with the power to help them.
Old friend, what would you do?
Filmmakers broke the mold in casting new crossover talent, in roles alongside established stars in an attempt to broaden the Western's appeal. Director Howard Hawks chose brat packer Dean Martin as a quick-draw deputy to John Wayne in the humorous and action-filled Rio Bravo. Martin is tormented by drink, but he still manages a song or two with co-star and 50s heartthrob Ricky Nelson.
She'll be waiting for my rifle, pony, and me.
Sam Peckinpah cast the country music star Chris Christopherson in the lead role as Billy the Kid, to James Coburn's Pat Garrett, with music legend Bob Dylan.
Keep change, Bob.
Dylan's character is extraordinary. You don't quite know what he's thinking. As he switches allegiances, you get the feeling that he's just along for the ride. A change had to come, as Richard Widmark said of the new Western characters. The heavies in my day were kids' stuff compared to today. Our villains had no redeeming qualities, but there's a new morality today. A villain is a guy with a frailty. Heroes are villains.
Wexler, you go ahead and kill anybody you want to. It's a free country. But if you do it with hate in your heart, you'll end up with nothing but an upset stomach.
My, oh my.
Old-time Western movie stars also reinvented themselves.
When I questioned you about that boy, I should have gone a bit deeper into the subject of character. I hope that's a mistake I won't live to regret.
Good fight. I enjoyed it.
Joel McRae stars in Sam Peckinpah's Ride the High Country, alongside screen great Randolph Scott. Together, they prove that they and the Western movie have still got what it takes.
Start the ball, old man!
The body count got higher still. From the opening scenes of The Wild Bunch, you know this movie is going to be violent. Sam Peckinpah uses the children as voyeuristic observers as William Holden's gang is hunted down by ex-partner Robert Ryan.
If they move, kill them.
William Holden's order sets the tone of the movie.
Set.
Notice the subtle sound of a heartbeat before the explosion of violence. Foreign filmmakers developed the Western style and content further still. Clint Eastwood, once Rowdy Yates in the TV hit Rawhide, became the man with no name in Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns. Clint Eastwood was the director as well as the star of the outlaw Josie Wales. Josie Wales is a peaceful farmer in the days near the end of the Civil War. After his home is burned and his family murdered, he hardens into a killer, dedicated to destroying the renegades who took his life away. The story is a saga. Wales is an outlaw, and on his journey encounters many a friend and foe.
We got the Josie Wales, Abe.
Hey, Josie Wales. He's
Eastwood is generous as a director, using the Panavision format to give the audience the widest view on his scenes. And he's generous as an actor. He even allows Chief Dan George to steal scenes from him.
Howdy. Howdy. Only an Indian can do something like this.
That's what I figured.
You figured?
Only an Indian could do something like that.
Is that right, this damn woman doing something like this to me? I used to have power.
When he finally catches the men who wronged him, he plays with them. It's as if Eastwood's character is saying, "This is the torment you put me through."
I can play it as bad as they want it, as bad as the story demands.
Welcome to Hard Times paid compliment to Sergio Leone's spaghetti style, with Henry Fonda playing the town mayor. Fonda had starred in Once Upon a Time in the West for Leone in 1968. Welcome to Hard Times is about a town ransacked single-handedly by a madman. The flaking paintwork of the town's once prosperous saloon is the flashpoint for the mayhem.
I don't want that gentleman in my place. I want him out of there.
The bad man is all the more scary for the fact that he doesn't speak a single line. US filmmakers referenced foreign movies. Japanese director Kurosawa's Rashomon was inspiration for Martin Ritt's The Outrage from 1964. 3 witnesses at the trial of a Mexican outlaw give conflicting testimony. Each version is shown in flashback.
You want to know what happened? I tell you.
As the story continues to unfold, the validity of each of the stories is questioned before the truth is finally revealed.
They killed him.
Why should she confess to a crime she didn't commit?
Oh, holy, like a Madonna. Who the hell is going to hang a Madonna?
John Sturges' Bad Day at Black Rock, starring Spencer Tracy, has a textbook stranger in town western form, but set in a modern-day railroad junction.
We're suspicious of strangers, is all. Hangover from the old days, the Old West.
I thought the tradition of the Old West was hospitality.
Yul Brynner reprised his starring role from The Magnificent Seven in Michael Crichton's clever blend of sci-fi and western in Westworld. He creates a mock frontier town where programmed robots go on the rampage. The western was spoofed. Blazing Saddles, set in a small town where everyone seems to be named Johnson. It's a movie that's full of great script and sight gags from Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder. Wilder plays the Waco Kid, the fastest gun ever. Cleveland Little plays the African-American sheriff.
Just give me 24 hours to come up with a brilliant idea to save our town.
No!
You do it for Randolph Scott.
Randolph Scott!
But it's probably most famous for that scene. The Western almost ran its course, and although the parameters had been previously defined, it was the talented stars and directors that helped generate new ideas and breathe new life into the Western genre. Over the years, so many Westerns were made by the big studios that many different actors have Westerns on their CV. John Wayne, James Stewart, Robert Taylor, James Cagney, Burt Lancaster, Spencer Tracy, Clint, Bogey, Clark, Errol, and it's almost wholly dominated by male stars. John Wayne, powerfully built with that characteristic walk, he was what a man should look like, who was capable of running the town or tracking the Comanches. And a lot of the time, it was him the audiences came to see.
Well, John Wayne was a one-of-a-kind character with the one-of-a-kind type appeal that those people have, and his films are still very, very popular. Whenever people ask about who your favorite actors are, he comes up high on the list all the time, and he's been gone for I don't know how many years now.
Director John Ford has said that to him, the landscape is as much a character as the players. Time after time, he chose Monument Valley as the settings for his stories. Beautifully shot in Technicolor, The Searchers is amongst his finest. John Wayne was legendary and a big box office draw by 1956. The Searchers provides the proof that John Wayne was indeed an exceptional actor, enforced by his multi-layered performance. He gives a complex portrait of a man looking for redemption and salvation. Ethan Edwards is a drifter. When a Comanche raid destroys his brother's home, kills his family and kidnaps his niece, he vows to bring her home.
Martha! Martha!
I found Lucy back in the canyon. Wrapped her in my coat.
Did they? What was she?
What do you want me to do? Draw you a picture? Spell it out? Don't ever ask me.
Ethan Edwards is the closest thing to a villain John Wayne played in the movies. At the beginning, Ethan Edwards lives only for hate and revenge.
Why don't you finish the job?
And at the end, he is fated like the spirit of the dead Comanche he condemns.
Ain't got no eyes, he can't enter the spirit land. Has to wander forever between the winds.
By the end, he becomes merciful and forgiving. Many actors have found acclaim and success in other movie genres, whilst their work in westerns was overlooked. James Stewart's "Aw Shucks" demeanor served him well in other movies, but his work as a western star gave him a chance to display his darker side. In 1953, he gives a performance equal to any in The Naked Spur.
I'm taking him back, and I'm going to do it alone.
You didn't catch him alone. You was going round and round until you run into me.
You were hired to do a job, and you were paid for it.
He plays an anti-hero role. He's a bounty hunter driven by money. He heads westward from Abilene, Kansas, to the Colorado Rockies on the trail of murderer Ben Vandergroat, played by the excellent Robert Ryan.
No, ain't that the way?
Stewart picks up unwanted help along the way to bring this man to justice and to realize the $5,000 reward.
You shot a man on the back, and I'm taking you in to hang for it.
It wasn't Ben that killed that man.
Ryan's character does a superb job of undermining the group, so that pretty soon they're at each other's throats.
Trouble is, I don't trust you no more than I trust them. Well, you don't have to trust nobody. Even if you don't fancy my gold mine, you still got me all to yourself. Now, that's saying I trust you. Say I tell you where my gold is, you might still turn me in. If I make a deal, I stick by it. Oh! Kill him!
A bullet right here on the trail or a rope in Abilene.
Choosing the way to die, what's the difference? Choosing the way to live, that's the hard part. That's what's eating you, ain't it, Howie?
There's nothing eating me. Somebody was bound to collect on you.
A young Janet Leigh provides a little glamour and eventually shows James Stewart that things don't have to end this way.
What else do you want from me?
Why? Tell me why. I'm taking him back, I swear it. I'm gonna sell him for money.
Not until John Wayne's portrayal of Ethan Edwards in The Searchers would audiences get to see a Western hero more tortured, more possessed of hatred. On his acting style, he once said of himself, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing a Jimmy Stewart imitation myself."
Say, isn't that Wyatt Earp?
Sure, over the corner playing poker.
Stewart makes a cameo appearance in John Ford's Cheyenne Autumn as legend Wyatt Earp.
I don't give a damn if you are the best gunslinger in Kansas. Take that back, now.
Now, Texas, you're just talking yourself straight into the calaboose.
Not me.
In 1962, James Stewart played the trapper Linus Rawlings in the first part of How the West Was Won. He falls in love with Carol Baker.
You make me feel like a man standing on a narrow ledge, coming face to face with a grizzly bear. There just ain't no ignoring the situation.
And he abandons his solitary existence for a new life with her, and together they start a family.
My golly, you're a strong-minded woman. I reckon I seen that varmint for the last time.
The Rawlings bloodline continues with George Peppard, who plays his eldest son. The story then follows him through the Civil War to the coming of the railroad.
Here your name's Rawlins, you're from Ohio. Your pa's name couldn't be Linus Rawlins, could it?
Could be.
Knew him. Jethro Stewart.
He used to speak of you.
Used to?
Pa was killed in Shiloh.
Robert Taylor starred in many westerns from 1939 in Stand Up and Fight.
I am. Put up your hands.
To The Law and Jake Wade in 1958. Directed by John Sturgis, Robert Taylor plays a marshal who travels to a small town to break former partner Richard Widmark out of jail.
Don't turn around. Keep your hands to your side. All right, now open that center cell.
What if I don't?
If you don't, I'll kill you, take your keys, and open it myself.
I guess you figure this squares us up, huh?
You pulled me out of exactly the same spot one time. Now I've done it for you.
Except Taylor is kidnapped and is forced to recover stolen loot they stashed years ago.
How much further are we going today, Clint?
Well, that depends on how much further we got to go altogether, Jake. You know, you haven't been exactly what I'd call explicit about where this place is.
You haven't satisfied me about what happens to her after I do take you there.
It's what's gonna happen to her if you don't take me there.
Taylor is an interesting character, and once said of acting that it is the easiest job in the world, and I'm the luckiest guy. All I have to do is be at the studio on time and know my lines. The wardrobe department tells me what to wear, the assistant director tells me where to go, the director tells me what to do. What could be easier?
You're a strange man, Rio. You have no vices. No wine, no women, not even talk. If a man should kill you, should not aim at your heart.
He played a memorable Billy the Kid in 1941.
Blackie, silly you!
You got anything to think with? Start using it.
Left-handed, eh?
Saving my right to shake hands with friends.
At one time billed the man with a perfect profile, this handsome, wavy-haired leading man for a time rivaled Clark Gable as the screen's top romantic lead.
There's only two things in this world that scares me, and a good woman's both.
Known as the King of Hollywood, Clark Gable was the ultimate leading man, and he made a huge impact in westerns too. He played a con man alongside the lovely Lana Turner in Honky Tonk in 1941.
Smells kind of good for such an old trick. We're going to play a little game called committing suicide.
What's the rule?
One of us shoots himself.
The other?
Laughs his sides off.
In 1951, Clark played a politically motivated Texan in Lone Star, out to win the peace and the love of Ava Gardner.
You better have a doctor look at this.
Is that an order? I don't want to make any more mistakes.
You're making one right now.
Sorry.
Also in 1951, he played a beaver trapper in Across the Wide Missouri. Directed by William Wellman, we see that familiar smile and swagger as Gable plays Flint Mitchell, friend to the Native Americans of the region. He marries a chief's daughter, and together they have a son. The peace with the tribes gets broken, and she is accidentally killed. Director Wellman stages a touching burial scene with his surviving son. Tragically, in real life, Clark himself died 4 months before the birth of his own son in 1961. Errol Flynn thrilled cinema-goers in the 30s when he burst on the scene as Captain Blood in 1935. His swashbuckling charm won the hearts of countless fans throughout the world. Flynn brought the same larger-than-life style to his roles in the many fine westerns he starred in.
Looking for someone, Charlie? I ought to take that thing and bend it right over your head.
San Antonio was the Christmas holiday movie for 1945. Flynn has the distinction of being the most successful non-US actor in US westerns ever at the box office.
Well, hello. Move over, honey.
Flynn plays Clay Hardin, a dashing outlaw with an eye for the ladies and a nose for trouble.
Your arm around.
Better stay back out of line of fire. This can be anything.
Here it comes.
Although the movie was directed by David Butler, Raoul Walsh had a hand in some of the scenes.
Hiya, Roy. Why, you look a little surprised to see me. What's the matter, Leif? Something go wrong?
Master of the understatement, Flynn was truly a one-off. Sergio Leone's influence on Clint Eastwood was such that he dedicated Unforgiven to him and Don Siegel. Eastwood starred and directed this Oscar winner in 1992. William Money, a notorious killer, has settled down on a farm with his 2 children, and times are very hard.
You don't look like no rootin', tootin' son of a bitch and cold-blooded assassin.
When he finds out there's a bounty for killing 2 cowboys, he reluctantly takes it on.
Say what? How about being my partner? I'm heading up north in through Nebraska up to Wyoming. Gonna kill a couple of no-good cowboys.
He enlists his old partner, Ned, played by Morgan Freeman.
Just because we're going on this killing, that don't mean I'm going to go back to being the way I was. I just need the money. Get a new start for them youngsters.
Gene Hackman won Best Supporting Oscar for his role as Little Bill, the evil sheriff of Big Whiskey. He stands between the boys and the bounty.
I'm gonna hurt you. Not gentle like before.
Eastwood and his cinematographer Bruce Surtees compose gritty, dirty, and at times beautiful frames for the story.
Was you ever scared in them days?
I can't remember. I was drunk most of the time.
The script was by David Peoples, who wrote seminal sci-fi movie Blade Runner. He penned Money's character as a man with no choice but to go through with a killing.
I've killed women and children. Killed just about everything that walks or crawled at one time or another. And I'm here to kill you, Little Bill. What you did to Ned.
Set up from the outset as a man of notoriously vicious and intemperate disposition, he struggles with his torment. The Western has become more than the sum of its parts. The movies are physically demanding, and there's no doubting the extra dimension that many fine actors have brought to each script and helped define further the true Western genre. John Ford is quoted as saying, "Anybody can direct a picture once they know the fundamentals. Directing is not a mystery, it's not an art. The main thing about directing is," he said, "photograph the people's eyes." Ford gave seminal roles to some of Hollywood's greatest stars. He had his own stock company. As Ford says, it's easier to get an actor to be a cowboy than to get a cowboy to be an actor. He's credited with creating one of the screen and genre's most enduring icons, namely John Wayne. In his 1948 movie, Three Godfathers, what starts out as a small-town holdup develops into something quite different. It's set at Christmas time, and as the outlaws are chased into the desert, Wayne and his gang run out of water and luck.
It ain't the best water, and it'll take time. But I guess we got plenty of time now.
Almost magically, they happen upon a dying woman and her baby. We see a classic Ford visual motif here. in the shot of the open wagon, like the doorway framing the subjects in The Searchers.
I want you, all of you, to be my baby's godfathers.
Yes, ma'am. It will be a big honor, Senora.
Director Ford gives John Wayne some of the most tender scenes with a newborn in the desert. And there's a wonderful hallucination scene in a canyon where Ford superimposes the spirits of the dead godfathers walking behind John Wayne with some effective trick photography. The movie was important to Ford. The supporting cast included Harry Carey Jr., son of his great friend to whom he dedicated the film. John Ford said in an interview in 1964 that he thought that the Western was one of the most cinematic genres. He said, "When a motion picture is at its best, it's long on action and short on dialogue. It's the economy and skillful craft that Ford puts into his movies that sets them apart." In Cheyenne Autumn, John Ford sought to make his own reparation to the Indian nation. This is a thoughtful, sympathetic treatment, almost a personal project.
The white man's words are lies.
From the beginning, he shows the army as untrustworthy, and then later, the commanding officer as murderous.
Company, charge!
Richard Widmark's character holds Ford's sympathies dear, and he sets out to get justice for the Cheyenne.
Go back to your
Major, I've got to tell you, the majority of those people are women and children. Maybe 50 or 60 warriors.
Watch her, you're under arrest.
But it was The Searchers that was Ford and Wayne's greatest collaboration. John Wayne considered it his best, and he named his third son, John Ethan, in honor of his screen character. In 1962, John Wayne appeared as General Sherman in John Ford's segment of How the West Was Won. Russ Tamblyn, who also starred alongside him, recalls the days on set.
I watched Ford work with John Wayne, which was just incredible. I guess he had known the Duke so well that he just absolutely nailed him. All day he would get, "Duke, what the hell's wrong with you, you know? Don't you know, haven't you learned how to act after all these years?"
Oh, don't you think I've ever felt like that?
And he would push him around, and he constantly told him off. I mean, all day long. And Wayne just stood there and took it. It was just like a kid all day.
In 1939, director Michael Curtiz made what would today be called a blockbuster. Dodge City starred Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. It's the tale of how the city came to be.
So this is Dodge City, huh? It sort of smells like Fort Worth, don't it? Oh, that's not the city you smell, that's you.
The movie was shot in Technicolor and is fondly remembered for the bar brawl in the Gay Ladies Saloon. The fight starts with an impromptu patriotic singing competition.
The flag that makes you free, so we sang the chorus from the planet to the sea.
Curtiz used a similar device 3 years later in Rick's Bar in the movie Casablanca. A now classic cowboy punch-up ensues that lasts a full 3.5 minutes of screen time. Cowboys just love to fight.
That's one fight you Yanks didn't win.
Errol Flynn's character had the guts and maybe the stupidity to tackle the job of sheriff.
I've no wish to spoil your fun, Sir Ed. But would you be kind enough to tell those men to let him go? You heard what I said, I think. Tell him to let him go.
All right. String him up, boys.
Curtiz allows Flynn to do what he does best, and he treats the audience to a slam-bang western, complete with cattle stampedes, runaway trains on fire, and all kinds of mayhem. Colorado Territory is one of the best films directed by Raoul Walsh. It's a remake of his own High Sierra with Humphrey Bogart and Ida Lupino. Outlaw Wes McQueen, played by Joel McCrea, is sprung from jail to help pull one last railroad job. He doesn't trust his new partners, except exotic dancehall girl Colorado Carson, played by Virginia Mayo.
Who are you?
I'll do the asking.
But McQueen is living a double life, and his sweetheart is farm girl Julianne Winslow, played by Dorothy Malone.
Remember you said I never talked much about myself. Good reason why. I got another life to get done with once and for all. Won't take but a few days. Then I'll be back.
We'll be here, Chet.
McQueen sees this as his last job, and then he can get out. His big problem, though, is that he has a $20,000 reward on his head, dead or alive.
What do you want to do? Stay with me and get killed? We've got to split up till this blows over.
They'd take you.
They'll never take me. I've seen all the jails I'll ever see. This time it'd mean the rope.
Colorado Territory has become a cult favorite because of Walsh's combination of a Western setting and film noir plot, helped greatly by Sid Hickox's black and white photography of the New Mexico hills and the fascinating portrayal of the female lead.
Hey, McQueen!
Walsh sets the scene of his capture in a sacred city with no way out. The ending sees Virginia Mayo standing by her man in the final shootout. In 1953, John Sturges' first color movie was a Western, Escape from Fort Bravo, and it starred William Holden. Shot in Death Valley, it was photographed by Robert Surtees, whose son, Bruce, went on to shoot Clint Eastwood's classic Westerns. Holden is the ruthless Union captain renowned throughout his prison fort as the toughest soldier in the business. He'll capture every escaped convict under his supervision.
What are we waiting for? The right time? What's that? When I say so?
A group of prisoners hatch a plot to escape by bringing in a Southern belle to distract the captain.
May I walk you home?
What part of Texas are you from?
The plan seems to work, but the inhospitable desert and the murderous Indians, and most importantly, the captain, apparently wronged in love, means that this is only the start.
What are they trying to do, build a fence around us? I don't understand.
The final battle scenes show William Holden and the escapees cornered in a dry riverbed. The tribe's archers use a unique strategy to kill them. Watching the arrows fall ever closer to the mark is torture enough for the audience. Anthony Mann cast Glenn Ford in his remake of Cimarron in 1960. Mann stages some memorable scenes, including this trick shot in the main street. Can you see the join?
That's far enough.
Notice the actor Vic Moreau, who plays the villain in the Schoolhouse Siege. Movie fans may remember that he played opposite Glenn Ford in a similar, less deadly classroom standoff in Blackboard Jungle of 1955.
I'm coming out with this kid in front of me! You're not coming out with any kid!
Howard Hawks said about his job, "I'm a storyteller. That's the chief function of a director. And they're moving pictures. Let's make 'em move." Rio Bravo reflected Hawks' dislike of classic Western high noon. Rio Bravo may appear conventional on the surface, but the characters are observed with great insight and wit.
I don't know what I'd do without you.
Said Hawks, "In Rio Bravo, I imagine there are almost as many laughs as if we had made a comedy." Hawks neatly built on the juxtaposition of established and up-and-coming stars.
Didn't allow for the win.
Oh, stop cackling.
And the pairing of John Wayne with Angie Dickinson recalls the Bacall Bogart days of the 40s.
Hi, John T.
Where'd you get those things?
I wore them the last place I worked.
Well, why are you wearing them now?
I'm gonna do a song.
You need a rig like that to sing?
You haven't heard me sing.
It's no surprise as Hawks was collaborating with his favorite scriptwriters, Lee Brackett and Jules Furthman, who wrote The Big Sleep for him 13 years before. Hawks would go on to make the same story twice over as El Dorado in 1967 and Rio Lobo in 1970. Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch in 1969 opened new doors in cinematic violence and took the American Western into fresh territory. The film, in a sense, was the first modern action film that paved the way for a new brand of action in Hollywood during the next 3 decades. The movie took a realistic approach to violence that showed how agonizing and painful death really was. Probably the all-rounder accolade must go to Clint Eastwood, who not only starred in some memorable westerns, he directed them as well. Unforgiven, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and Pale Rider. Of the latter, Clint noted, "To analyze the classic western, you can still talk about sweat and hard work, about the spirit, about love for the land and ecology. And I think you can say all these things in the western, in the classic mythological form."
And behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death.
Eastwood plays a mysterious man of the cloth with a dark past.
And hell followed with him.
Clint arrives amidst a crisis in a small community of tin panners laboring in a gold rush-era California. They're in constant threat of being rousted from their claims by a grasping mining baron, played by Richard Dysart.
He could give them faith. Shit. 1 ounce of faith, they'll be dug in deeper than ticks on a hound. You boys, you go throw a rope around that man. You bring him to me.
He has the whole town in his pocket, and his urgency stems from the fact that his excessive hydraulic strip mining operations on his own property have left the earth nearly barren.
You're a troublemaker, stranger.
It's a classic story of the big guys against the little guys, aided by a lone stranger, Eastwood, who enters town astride a pale steed like an apocalyptic horseman from biblical prophecy.
The Lord certainly does work in mysterious ways.
Clint Eastwood said in 1980 that making a good movie takes a good cast, a good story, and everything else. Pale Rider has a splendid look, with the Sun Valley, Idaho locations given vibrancy by Bruce Surtees, the cinematographer. Whilst no major cycle of American westerns would follow in its wake, the film stood as a vindication of the form and proof of its continuing viability. This retrospective look at the Western phenomena is dedicated to the many movie fans who watched their heroes and heroines walk, ride, build, rob, sing, work, and romance their way across the wild frontier. The Western has a certain look to it, always. And the appeal it has is most definitely universal.
Let's go home, Debbie.
And here, looking forward to the next 100 years.